Welcome to Proto-Future, a public service announcement that reminds you to just say no to cars. This is Episode 9, Gap Pilot Part 1. In this episode, I go all the way back to 2023 to the pilot episode I recorded riding Amtrak and the Great Allegheny Passage long-distance bicycle trail. To start off, a reminder that this podcast is now provisionally part of CAN, the Creator Accountability Network, a system for restorative justice among content creators. If you have any issues with my content or behavior, please report it to CAN at 617-249-4255 or on their website at creatoraccountabilitynetwork.org. Additionally, please consider volunteering your time and recommending CAN to other creators to help make better, more inclusive, and respectful internet communities. As you will all likely remember from my heavy illusions over the years, one of the things that got PFP off the ground was a test episode I set about making in May of 2023, a full 6 months before I finally decided to publish the Manifesto. Back then, I was worried sick I wouldn't know what to talk about after I got through the prologue series, although this turns out not to have been an item of concern. To prove to myself that there was something to the show concept, mixing modeling, modern transit, and urbanism, I grabbed an old recorder I used for undergrad lecture courses and set out on a train and bike ride to Pittsburgh and back from Connellsville, Pennsylvania. I learned a lot on that trip, both in actual technique as well as presentation. Probably the biggest observation in editing is that I was much more metacognitive in my podcasting. I couldn't get over the fact that I was talking to myself in public, and in many ways, I was talking to myself through talking to myself in public. Not quite sure what I was supposed to be saying or how detailed I wanted to make my observations for an audio medium. Suffice it to say, I have abridged a lot. Especially compared to the Borealis series last year, I was very, very green. However, I have kept these files around in part because they served as de facto foundational mission statements that influenced a lot of what came later, and I would hope that they are of interest at least to some listeners. I will warn you, however, they are quite a bit rough. Let's see how this goes. I have a lovely integrated bike lock on my bicycle. It's called a cafe lock, and it basically locks the rear wheel such that I can just leave it, usually fairly safely, standing but not attached to any physical object. That's what you just heard. I actually didn't intend to start recording then, but accidentally hit the button, and so here we are. Welcome to, if not the first episode, definitely the first field episode of what I'm tentatively going to call Proto-Future. But obviously this is coming in the same podcast feed as the Beginner's Guide to Model Railroading. I think by the time you hear this, even though it will probably be months later for me, I'm recording this in late May 2023, you probably would already have gotten the idea. But here's a short summary, in part also to simplify things for myself going forward. Beginner's Guide to Model Railroading was fun. I started it as a project when I was at least comparatively young, like, I don't know, I think like maybe when I was 20 or maybe 21, maybe even 19, I don't know. And I was young and inexperienced, as you could probably no doubt tell from my complete inability to ever choose a theme song. And it chugged along like 3 episodes a year, sometimes 2, because I'm busy, young professional, going to grad school, and all that. But it kind of always had an end date. There is only so much that you can do and describe in how to build a model railroad, and, well, what do I do after it? I never really thought that through to the end, but now that I'm, like, doing scenery episodes, it's going to be, like, what? Structure building, operating, and then that's it, I think. So even though at my incredibly slow rate of production, those are still probably years away, I would need to do something in order to occupy myself. And then also, kind of a little bit over the pandemic, a little bit because of this podcast, episode 14 it was, that I think I described the history of light rail, and then it turned into an NMRX presentation, and then it turned into 3 presentations, which I debuted for the first time earlier this month in Pittsburgh, at the Rails to Pittsburgh convention for, I think, Mid-Central, Mid-Continent region, MR, something like that. It was an absolute runaway success. People loved it. I was incredibly proud of my efforts, even though it was presenting exclusively on modern subjects to people who largely only care about the past. The fact that it went over that well was, I was very happy. And now the 3 presentations are done. I literally was having so much fun making them. In case you aren't aware, Part 1, Modeling Modern Transit Systems, Part 2, Passenger Services Prototypical on Small Modern Switching Layouts, Part 3, Proto-Freelancing in the Wrong Direction, My Accidental Quest to Model the Near Future, which is, as I describe it, it's more stand-up comedy routine than how-to clinic, but hey, it's fun. Now that those are done, I'm starting to build a new model railroad for myself, which, again, I think you will have heard an episode about, but it should be modeling a hypothetical future passenger service in southeastern Minnesota in 20-odd or so years in the future, something like that. Combining this newfound interest with this massive transition from steam era narrow gauge to future diesel intercity passenger trains, well, kind of going back a little bit, part of the reason why I put my own model railroading on pause, almost, just to make the presentations, is because even though steam trains are wonderful, and I love steam trains, and I have my entire life, I kind of was losing motivation on the railroad. And then I came up with this crazy new subject, and I basically was going through my own emotions in real time while making the 3rd presentation, which is kind of why it's a stand-up comedy routine and not a how-to clinic. I realized that my interests were actually different. Over the past 7 years it's been, I've taken so many different trips on Amtrak, I've traveled to cities, ridden so many different subways and light rail systems, and my views as to what I want my life to be are also somewhat different. I am now very interested in urbanism, in living car light or car free. I have my car, obviously that's how I brought my bicycle here. Not anymore. But in everything that I do, I try to walk, and if I can't walk, I take my bicycle, and if I can't take my bicycle, I take rail transit, and if rail transit doesn't exist, I take the bus, and if I can't take the bus, I ride my motorcycle, and if I can't ride my motorcycle, I fly a plane, and if I can't fly a plane, then only as the last possible option will I take my car. Cars are big, they are polluting, they make bad environments. Just look at any suburb with like 4 to 6, or God's worse, more lane roads. They are visually uninviting, they lead to communities that are homogenous and uninteresting and hostile to people who can't afford cars, and even if you do have a car, it basically is like living life behind a paywall. Want to leave your house and hang out with friends? Well, tough luck. Unless you're incredibly privileged to have a home in a nice walkable environment, you have to take your car to get anywhere. Cars are just bad. It's a wrong way to live a life, and at this point in my life, I am seriously considering moving to Europe, even though I don't speak any of the languages there, because remember, the UK is no longer part of Europe. I've been there, Switzerland looks nice, Germany has lots of major universities. I'm seriously considering it. But all of that ranting aside, I kind of realized that at some point I had this podcast that was sputtering along, and it was already kind of getting to the end of its natural lifespan, and I'm building this new crazy model railroad that is like modeling the future and like walkable, livable communities, and intercity passenger trains, and streetcars maybe, if I can find the space for it, and I'm already traveling to all of these different and interesting places, taking rail-centric trips and exploring cities from a walkable perspective. And I kind of have already made several presentations on the subject, but now I'm kind of needing to fill that creative outlet since the 3 presentations are done, and it would be absolutely ridiculous to make a 4th at this point, so soon after. I should at least rest on my laurels and return to my own modeling. So that's kind of this loose agglomeration of what this podcast, again, tentative title, Proto-Future, it will be about. Tentative tagline, modeling better cities. These days, I personally prefer the world's only eco-Marxist model railroading podcast, bringing the culture wars to boomers' basements. I think I may as well take you along on some of my trips and observations, kind of leave a permanent and accessible record of all of my craziness, not just tell stories to people saying, I visited Cleveland and Boston and DC and rode most, if not all of their subway systems, and I made this presentation about all three. I may as well just tell you the stories of visiting Cleveland or Boston or DC or wherever else it is that I go next. Maybe even Europe too, given that I seem to be going there increasingly these days. Currently, and this is kind of the pilot field test, if you never hear this, well then clearly it didn't go well. But if you do, then this is me kind of getting it straight. The Beginner's Guide to Model Railroading has been heavily scripted and aggressively edited, and I've never actually spoken off the cuff before in a field environment where editing cuts would be much more noticeable. I also haven't had to journalistically assemble a story. I haven't had to take raw footage and then consider, which parts of these are the ones worth telling. And that's kind of what I'm testing myself doing today. That begs the question, what am I doing today? As astute people could hear and figure out based on the fact that I have my bicycle and that there is a train dinging away, switching the yard in the background, you probably could have figured out that I'm somewhere along the Great Allegheny Passage, or specifically, Connellsville, Pennsylvania. I have ridden the gap from Pittsburgh to Cumberland before. I intend to finish it with its counterpart trail, the Chesapeake and Ohio towpath, and obviously probably divert onto the Western Maryland Rail Trail, which parallels that for a long distance, going from Cumberland to DC. I have done overnight bike packing before. Actually, my first bicycle century, which is 100 miles in a day, was done on the gap, actually starting from this station, Connellsville, and then I bicycled back to Cumberland, which to the astute listeners is only 90 miles. So my very first time ever doing overnight bike packing and traveling such a grand distance, I had to, at mile 90's worth of exhaustion, see my car and go 5 miles further away from it and 5 miles back in order to get the full 100. That alone almost killed me. There are probably more stories to that which I will tell you along the way. What I did before is I actually parked my bicycle here at Connellsville, drove the car to Cumberland, then took Amtrak's Capital Limited from Cumberland here to Connellsville, retrieved my bicycle, camped across the river at a lovely hiker-biker campsite that they have, and then did the 100 miles the next day. Today, it was kind of motivated, it's actually very off the cuff, so much so that I do not even have hotel accommodations in Pittsburgh tonight. Yet. I noticed that the Capital Limited has a freely available bicycle spot on the train, which these are very rare. They only have 8 bicycle spots usually, and because DC is a big and affluent place with a lot of bicycle commuters and bike packers because of the immediate proximity of the towpath, those bike spots usually are very hard to come by. They're usually booked out 6 or more months in advance as people are making their summer plans. So, when I noticed that the slot was available on the Capital Limited, I simply jumped on it, because I don't know even if I will be able to do this for when I do the towpath. I think I might have to do the pre-staging setup as well. And also, it's a fairly short trip. It's 90 kilometers, so I don't know what that is in miles, because people who use Imperial are colonizers. So the plan, as has come together in an alarmingly short period of time, I threw my bike together, put it in the back of the car. I have brought along some camping equipment just in case something bad happens, but unfortunately, the Capital Limited schedule is a bit inconvenient at this place and time. The train arrives at 21:47, and it arrives just a hair short of midnight at Pittsburgh, and the nearest campsite outside of Pittsburgh is nearly 20 miles. So, unfortunately, I will not be getting any camping, and twice, unfortunately, I will have to pay for an exorbitant downtown hotel room fee, which is difficult for someone of my age and of my employment as a scientist, where we really don't get the amount of money that we deserve for the insane amount of hours that we work, but that's up to the voters. That's a you problem, not a me problem. But one of the main motivations for doing this, at least on a personal level, is I get to fill in a gap, pun somewhat intended, on the train, actually. I have bicycled, it was actually a COVID project, going out with friends. We would do short 20-mile segments of the gap, starting from Pittsburgh, and then it was like McKeesport and West Newton, and then eventually making it to Connellsville, and then I did it on my own from Connellsville to Cumberland to finish it. But that means that I only got to take the Capital Limited in a middle isolated segment. I've ridden the Capital Limited from Pittsburgh to Chicago before, but I have not done it between Pittsburgh and DC. I have done Connellsville to Cumberland. I probably will, with bike or without, take it from Cumberland to DC, so then that will leave me with one very tiny, isolated, one-night-long segment between Connellsville and Pittsburgh. So I saw the opening of the bicycle accommodations, I jumped on it, and now I have to get a hotel tonight, which I haven't yet planned for. I'll figure things out. But, almost because the train arrives so obscenely late here, I have plenty of time. I started a little bit of science this morning. I started and stocked some cultures, and my lab mates will be taking care of the cultures that I started tomorrow, very kindly. And yeah, it's not quite what is called an S240, a sub-24-hour overnight, and that's kind of like for people who like outdoorsy stuff, but they don't have much time to take a full weekend, so it's going to be, the latter portion of today, and then most of tomorrow. It might not be exactly under 24 hours, but it's kind of a nice adventure that I have been desperately needing in my life at this point in time. Fifth-year PhD student. 7th year, presently. Fuck me, I need to graduate and skip town already. There's a new sentence I'm learning. Ich möchte einen Flüchtling werden. I would like to become a refugee. As for the rest of this podcast, well, I will try to hit monthly, because I am now wrapping it in with the things that I'm already doing. It will probably be easier to make content. It's still probably going to be time-consuming to edit it, so I can't necessarily guarantee monthly, but I'm going to try, because I think, as I have learned from my presentations, there is a market for this, even in the largely geriatric hobby that is model railroading. And so, on one end, I could take people who are already interested in trains, talk to them somewhat about the train stuff that I'm doing, both real and model, and then also bring them along on an adventure of urbanism and bicycling and transit, and then hopefully influence the voter pool that way, make people more interested in spending more money on transit, which I think is something that we absolutely should do, both intercity and metropolitan. And then the other way around. Gen Z, and to a lesser extent millennials, we know from survey data, are massively more interested in transit and not automobiles than basically any generation since, the 1920s, I think. 26% fewer Zoomers have driver's licenses at their same age than Boomers did. So maybe I can also take it the other way around. I can capture the younger generation who likes transit and urbanism, and then also introduce them to model railroading as well. And then there's going to be me, caught in the middle, someone who's split between generations, although I think some people would call me a zillennial, somebody who is in the millennial generation, but is so young in millennials as to be more ideologically aligned with Zoomers, but that's another story. And then there's going to be me in the middle, building a model railroad of walkable urban communities. I frankly have no idea where that's going to go, because again, if I, move to Europe, it's going to be very difficult and expensive to take a model railroad with me, and that's even ignoring the one that I already have. So, yeah, I have some stuff to work out on my own, but it's enjoyable. I have a compunction about me to share my journey with other people, and again, it will be, like I said, bringing you along on things I'm already doing, so I'm not necessarily going to be going that far out of the way. It's not like the old BGT stuff, where I would have to set aside time in my life to write a script about something I wasn't exactly doing. And then also, conversely, maybe actually giving a podcast about this will help reinforce my motivation to keep progress on my own modeling efforts, and then remind me why I'm doing it. Because, trains. Alright, I have babbled on enough. I thought I was going to give you a brief summary, and then I just basically probably restated things for you, front to back. We shall see how that goes. But for now, I think I have at least 4 hours, maybe 5 until the train arrives, I am going to find a local bar or restaurant, sit myself down, plug my laptop in, write my presentation for lab meeting on Monday, which I haven't even started making, then hopefully find hotels. Actually, I'll probably do that in the reverse order. And then if I have some spare time beyond that, I will look into finishing up some of the scripts that I'm writing for the podcast episodes. I think I'm going to give you 3 Manifesto episodes, or prologues, I guess, before I actually release this one, which would be the first, test case for the new Proto-Future. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll give you a brief tour of Connellsville first. Let's see if I can do podcasting and writing. It's nothing too fancy, but the Gap is wonderful. I'll talk to you about that. We'll see how that goes. I have a nice little pouch on my backpack, which can keep a recorder that I had for science and school purposes fairly close up on my shoulder next to my mouth, so hopefully you can hear me adequately and you don't get too much in the way of wind noise. And this will also give me an opportunity to take a ride down by the Connellsville yard. And the sidewalk disappears almost immediately out of the station. Oh, America. So I think from what I saw, this is a remote switcher. And if I recall, I think this was the northern extent of some sort of railroad coming up from Maryland and West Virginia. Maybe it was the Western Maryland. Actually, yeah, I think this was a stop on the Alpha Jets, the Alphabet route, because I know that the Gap is partially Pittsburgh and West Virginia, maybe, or something like that. Yep, it has flashing lights on top, indicating I think it is remote controlled. Having spent the vast majority of my life obsessing over steam trains, I do not know enough about diesels. There's a car behind me. Here, I'll pull over. Oh, a single car, a side-load dump car of ballast. CSX. One of the GT38-3, another SD40-3. Oh, there's a Wheeling and Lake Erie locomotive set. Oh, and the FERC's leaser unit, the gray and green ones. I always did like those. I actually think I have a Bowser model that I've been procrastinating actually installing with a DCC and sound. It was kind of like a test case to actually teach me about it, although if I've learned anything from DCC installations, it's that I like the factory to do it. They also have a single car, a slightly modified gondola with peculiarly higher ends. I have no idea what purpose that could have. Okay. Yee! Oh, and that is not a through alleyway. Okay, I'll have to find another way up and over. I'm kind of modeling a lot of this, at least a portion of this adventure, off of another podcast that I love, the Pedal Shift podcast. A guy who actually himself is based out of DC and does a lot of riding on the CNO towpath and sometimes the Gap. So at least as far as this goes, I can tell you pretty much that Proto-Future could possibly be described as pedal shift, but with trains. Trip reports, kind of, as I explore the environment. The Connellsville Canteen, museum, restaurant, and history display. That's an odd combination.
Yet, paradoxically, it was closed, despite it being
Saturday evening. That's the kind of prime activity hours here. And this is in downtown, albeit it's a very small American downtown, because we have horrible nightlife because of car dependency, pushing people into the suburbs such that there's no street life. Anyway, I have crossed over the river. I should probably get a name of what that is.
the Youghiogheny River, spelled in absolutely no way like you think it is. When I first moved to Pennsylvania, I thought it was Youghiogheny, rhyming with diagonally.
Ooh, very unhelpfully cracked pavement. Bad enough for a car, it's potentially lethal to a bicycle. So, thank you very little, Windermere Engineering, for your lack of curb cuts. Okay, I think the first lovely little restaurant I'll try is the Kickstand Cafe. They're one of the trailside eateries for the Gap. Surprising amount of people bustling right now. I could not imagine growing up here. It must be awful. I'm bored in a moderately large, very affluent city. Anybody else? Whoa. Okay, so, to those who don't know, the Great Allegheny Passage is, in my opinion, a fantastical piece of infrastructural engineering. They took a combination of various community trails, most of them were rails to trails, and they stitched them end to end to come up with a, 340 odd mile continuous route from downtown Pittsburgh to downtown DC. It is basically a bicyclist highway, which, I mean, kind of makes sense. You have that for cars, obviously, they are called highways. You have that for trains, they're called long-distance passenger trains. But what if you wanted to bicycle? Well, tough luck. You have to risk life or limb on the side of an actual highway where you could get run over by things going 4 times your speed and weighing, 20 times as much. Not very nice. This, though, the Gap, is a long and continuous stretch of mostly exclusive right-of-way. It alternates between asphalt, paved surfaces, and macadamized gravel, so it's not like complete luxury the entire way. But the fact that it is adequately signed as a continuous system, and that they have amenities along the way in the form of hiker-biker campsites, it is so useful. And at least for me, it magnetically draws my activities towards the towns that are along the way. Like, for example, the trailside restaurants that I mentioned. Those seem to be doing gangbusters. It's a very entertaining and economical way to have something that's kind of like in between wilderness backpacking and small town B&Bing. To an extent, this is probably one of the better ways that small towns can stimulate their economies, because, again, as I've mentioned exhaustively, Zoomers and Millennials are interested more than most any other generation in the past 100 years in big cities and urbanism-style living. You can't say that small towns are good and then just end it there. You have to have some sort of reason for it, and most of the reasons that people have mentioned are ones that Zoomers do not like. So small towns are dying at an incredibly fast rate, unless they have useful amenities that fit in with modern sensibilities, like intercity passenger train stops, long-distance trails, or both. Ideally pair them together such that you can ride one way and then take the train back, or the other way, kind of exactly like what I'm doing. To ride out and back takes more time that I currently do not have. To do straight up bike touring on the side of a road, even though I'm an aggressive bicyclist and do it basically everywhere, even that's a bit much for me, a bit too dangerous. I've made it to they call it a welcome center. I call it a hiker-biker campsite. It's 4 3-sided semi-tent shelters, all facing the trail, made out of wood and shingles, and it provides a degree of privacy for the hikers. It's a very, very useful amenity, and honestly, more places should do this. I swear, it is a magnet for basically anybody under 40. Since I'm not staying here tonight, this is where I stayed last time when I did my century, I'll be heading back into town. Again, starting at maybe the Kickstand Cafe to support the trailside businesses, and then maybe I'll move to the bar when that closes, and then when the bar closes, I'll have to move probably to another bar, and then when that closes, the train will have finally arrived. I heard an interesting solution a long time ago from a slightly kooky old person, but nonetheless, when you think about it, it makes sense. Solve all the long-distance routes by taking their exact routings as they are right now, and just have another train 12 hours delayed that runs over them. It gives endpoint cities more options for departures, and all the cities along the way that get served only during the night, well, now you have a train that comes during the day. And in theory, in some select locations, you actually be able to have same-day round trips without the need for an overnight, like I'm being forced to in Pittsburgh, because it's so bloody late, I can't start my traveling then.
Ironically, as I was talking, I passed an intersection next to a CVS pharmacy, mere months before the famed YouTubers behind Jetlag the Game, Adam Chase and Ben Doyle, passed through themselves. If I had known that then, I would have stopped in for a popcorn.
Lovely. I will get to use this intersection at some point, right? Okay, yay. I can actually go now. That's convenient. Although still, really not much in the way of even remotely safe bicycling sidewalks or cycle tracks. Hell, actually there isn't even a cycle gutter, which is just a painted line. Incredibly unsafe, because paint won't stop swerving car. A separate curb protecting the bicyclists from the cars and protecting the pedestrians from the bicyclists. That's what you need. So when I say cycle track, that's what it means. Basically think bicycle highway, something like that. I really have no idea what the market of this podcast is going to be. Because if it's majority model railroaders, then model railroaders being older and more car-centric statistically, I would have to give you lots of vocabulary lessons like that. If this is mostly urbanists of my age, well, they're probably going to get bored. It's like all the stuff they've already heard before, get to the trains. And again, here I am stuck in the middle, not really knowing what to do. I'm working on this in real time. Give me a few years, I'll iron out the kinks. Hopefully your patience will be rewarded. And I am back to the cycle track on 3rd Street connecting with the Gap. In the direction that I am heading, it is 90 miles to Cumberland, in the direction from whence I came. Okay, approaching the Kickstand Cafe of this, it's not a lovely small town. It's nice, it's fine. I would live here for the trail only. Not that they have any places that would remotely employ me. All right, I will head in for a late afternoon, early evening of work.
And that I did, having a lovely munching of homemade wontons. Then, when the restaurant closed, I retreated to a local watering hole, did some more work, and waited out the Capital Limited to arrive.
In today's episode of Why the Hell Am I Doing This to Myself, it's just past 21:27 it seems. So the train should be arriving in about 20-ish minutes. The switcher in the yard seems to have stopped its work today. It's completely dark out, although because of the rain earlier, there is a beautiful fog, adding just enough haze to make it atmospheric. It's a bit nippy. I possibly should have brought a jacket, although the forecast tomorrow indicates that I probably don't need to. Unfortunately, my bicycle brakes got oil contamination, and so they're a bit squeaky when it's damp out.
As it so happened, my bike mechanic later said that my brake pads had so much oil contamination that he cured it by setting them on fire to burn off the excess oil. That's how bad it was. Sorry for the squeaking in this episode.
The signal for the station track is green over red, which, being mostly a steam modeler, I don't really know what that means. I think it's clear. I think, to my understanding, the top light is the track ahead and the bottom light is the route. So green on top means the track ahead is clear, red on the bottom means you're lined for the track ahead, not any diverging routes, I think. But also right next to it there are 2 tracks with 2 towers of 3 red lights each, so I don't know. There are several other people waiting on the station tracks. It's a nice visual confirmation that the train decided to stay on time instead of arrive and depart many hours ahead of schedule. Yeah, just always a worry. Also, being on a route that has only 1 frequency daily, it's kind of I have no choice but to make this one. The people at the beach across the river seem to be having fun. Also, a notable thing, I've never actually taken my bike on Amtrak before. Arriving just short of midnight. Well, I guess we'll see how that goes. I have a hotel in Pittsburgh for, at least for me, a whopping $174. I never like it how they have so many additional fees and service charges. That makes it very difficult to travel. But I've kind of backed myself into this hole and I don't really have a choice. I'll go on what I frequently tell my friends is the train diet, where I spend lavishly on trains I don't need, although in this case it's 1-to-1 scale train trips, and then suffer through jars of canned beans and vegetables later. Call me impulsive. This is my addiction. I think they're rail fans. Should be about 5 minutes until the train arrives.
You waiting on Amtrak?
Yep.
It's 4 miles up.
Wonderful, thank you.
In a few minutes. Did I mention that? The truck stop is on. Let's go now.
Hark. Monocoque Genesis if I've ever seen it before. Whoa, it's only 4 coaches long and a baggage. Shortest I've seen it yet. Genesis number 45. Okay, do I load baggage or do I load elsewhere? Hello?
Right there, I'm the bike in that.
Baggage car?
Right there.
Thank you. It's a bit of a beefy boy.
They all are these days. We gotta pull the train down.
So I stay trackside and wait for you to move?
This is referring to the practice of spotting. On many long-distance trains, the trains being long and the platforms being minimal, rather than loading everyone at one door and making them diffuse sometimes quite far along the length of the train, it's not uncommon for crews to load sleeper and coach class passengers in 2 separate waves, while pulling the train slowly forward, making one stop at the front of the train, one at the back, and sometimes a few in the middle. I stood on the platform chatting up the conductor.
Should I follow you or wait?
Follow me.
Okay, thank you. I always have the anxiety of just watching the train pull away from me. In Columbus, Wisconsin, I once had a whopping 4 spots at the station.
It happens.
Thank you.
You upstairs? It's seat 61. And you're going to Pittsburgh, right?
Yes. Thank you. Here.
Right and the right upstairs.
Get out of your way first. Thank you so much. I always love how comfortable the Superliners are. Leg space for days. This is 2153. Most of the people are relaxed. The lights are low but not off. There's your typical mixture of people on board. I always love how many there are on a train, including, of course, the inescapable Amish.
Most people think the Amish and Mennonites are religious, but in reality they are a sophisticated governmental stimulus package to boost long-distance passenger train ridership. That is, after all, about the extent of their meaningful positive contributions to the world, being fundamentalist and eschewing such modern technology as salt or flavor.
Pretty close to the advertised. Looks like I have a functioning power outlet, so I can continue to work on my computer. Can I wash my stuff for a few minutes? Yeah, sure. Thank you. And which do you prefer, brownie, cookie, or candy bar?
I'll take a candy bar. They have like Skittles or...
Try and see what they have on that.
Okay, thank you.
One trip to the dining car later, I started a conversation with the conductor about his recent trips to Richmond and Chicago, the best times of the year to bicycle, which he quite intuitively presumed I was up to, and then how the Capital Limited is unique because it is crewed out of DC, the only long-distance train to do so besides the auto train, whereas DC is almost entirely short-haul trains up the corridor to New York and Boston, and Chicago has the dominant hold on the long-distance routes. However, in the intervening years, the Chicago to DC Capital Limited has been replaced with an end-to-end extension with the New York City to Miami Silver Star in an effort to alleviate Northeast Corridor congestion during construction and a shortage of superliner cars. Instead of naming it the Capital Star, which would have been both funny and unique, this new old train was named the Floridian, which was in fact a historic train that used to run Chicago to Miami, but via a much shorter, more direct route through Louisville and Birmingham, one which advocates are still trying desperately to restore. Anyway, the conductor and I also got along to how, the last time I took the train, I was taking the Cardinal to and from Indy Junction. Arriving into Indianapolis, there was a single crossover that was out of service, and a lack of redundancy sent us on a 20-mile trip due west of the city and back for 45 minutes just to switch tracks, technically making it a rare mileage excursion.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening. You too.
Oh, thank you so much.
One more trip to the cafe a while later, and I was assured my stop was...
very close, about 25 minutes away.
We just crossed over the Monongahela in McKeesport, and oh my goodness, it was gorgeous.
And late into the night, the suburbs of Pittsburgh approached, twinkling by on either side of the train. Even now, I remember how pretty it was.
If I am correct, I think this marks our curve away from the Monongahela River. We go through a tunnel up to the north side of Pittsburgh to get to the station. I believe the old route of the Capital Limited involved a backing maneuver on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in order to get to their station on the south side of downtown. But this new bypass allows a more direct route. It's surprising to me to note that the train is only one passenger coach long. I guess it kind of makes sense since it's a fairly popular overnight route. You wouldn't want to stack your efforts with sleeper cars. Still though, this is the start of summer. I would have thought that would have been like peak service, peak train length. Maybe we're still suffering COVID casualties. I think this is the tunnel near East Liberty.
At this point, the conductor and I continued our conversations from earlier. Since this was before I learned the tricks of the journalism trade, I neglected to ask consent, so I'm not sharing his end of the conversation. But he did ask some good questions, so I'll include my answers. He inquired if I hailed from Pittsburgh and what Penn State was like, and to that I responded,
I wish I was from Pittsburgh, or someplace equally as cosmopolitan. State College is an interesting place. It's fairly large, like 150,000 or so people during the semester, but it's built as a college town, and so it really only has enough things to keep you occupied or interested for about 4 years. But as a graduate student, the moment that you surpass 4 years is when you start to become cynical and sad and lonely. The downtown's pretty cute and worth a visit, maybe once or twice. And then you can go away to a more interesting place. Beg pardon, would you mind passing me the 2 Ortlieb panniers up there? Yep. Thank you so much. Sorry, my backpack is almost as big as my emotional baggage.
Okay, guys, come on.
Thank you so much. You too. On the track to our left is the Pennsylvanian, turned around for the morning's departure.
So just wait right here, and as soon as I get these luggage off, I'll head to your bag.
Wonderful.
Okay?
Thank you so much. Have a fantastic evening. Merci beaucoup, monsieur. I don't know. I love the future of Amtrak and what it holds, but I will always adore the Genesis units. Oh dear, how do I get a bicycle down? Do I try the escalator? Okay, I guess. Oh my goodness, this is working.
As I learned a few years later, watching much smarter people, since the trains board at the ground level of the main entryway of the former station building, whereas Amtrak is relegated to the basement, you are in fact allowed just to bicycle straight off the platform onto the street. No need to go inside, down, out, then up again like I did. Just so you know, in the event that anybody is taking a similar journey in the future. Back to my ill-advised trip down the escalator with an extra-large touring bicycle.
Excuse me. Thank you. Whoop. Okay. Well, while I'm here, it behooves me to remember elements of Pittsburgh Station. It is technically in the same building as its grandiose main station, but it's in the basement. The main station's atrium has been converted to an office building, and the actual waiting room of the station itself is quite, Spartan. Oh, I remember this place, and I remember it well. When I went on a grandiose cross-country trip from Altoona to Seattle and back via Sacramento, I stayed here. Not overnight, but was it Bill's Bar and Burger. And I met two lovely people. They were fairly old, like in their 60s, and they laughed about beard itch ointment. God, that is a trip that I wish I had this podcast going for. It was fantastic. Okay, leaving Liberty towards Penn. Also, by the way, for the record, the speed of bicycle is the most perfect speed for human travel. I think I'm right next to the convention center, which, if I recall, is the home of the largest furry parade in the country. There is a surprising amount of nightlife, and we also seem to have arrived early by at least 20 minutes, which, I mean, I guess it is a crew change point and a layover for presumably refueling. So I guess I could entirely understand a degree of schedule makeup period. Oh yeah, this road actually seems to have a dedicated cycle track, but only one way, and not the one that I'm going, annoyingly. Interesting.
Sorry, slow down.
Thank you.
With that, I tied up my bicycle and headed into the hotel.
So far, I'm very pleased with this. That was extremely fast and efficient for the fact that I reserved the room not but 4 hours ago or less. Oh, this is very large and bougie. I almost don't know what to do with myself. If I were to stare any further up at the blinds, I would literally break my neck, I think. Okay. 2 panniers are here. Backpack is still on me. Given the time and my earlier than expected arrival, I think I actually do have enough in me for a night on the town of sorts. I do want to go to the original Primanti's, which is, to those in the know, a notable central Pennsylvania chain. And even if I don't have anything to eat there, and even if it's just maybe a drink, it's still an experience. That, and it's also in the Strip District, which I've heard so much about as a hip, new, not quite up and coming, but more like already made it type of neighborhood. I'll probably give you more of my opinions of the neighborhoods of Pittsburgh tomorrow, so I'll leave it to the happy nightlife for now.
After arranging my stuff for the night, I headed back out on the town.
For the record, that bathroom was so massive, I would be happy if that was the whole hotel room in itself. This is a surprisingly lively street. I guess Saturday night, really, if there was ever a time for it, it would be now, but still. Okay, so even if I don't make it to an interesting bar this evening, the main thing that I want to achieve, astonishingly, for all the times I've ever been to Pittsburgh, I've never actually made it to the Strip District properly. I want to ride up and down the 2 main roads responsible for it. Okay, I think I know where I'm going. I think this actually will be my first ever trip in a real cycle track. Okay, not great. They have manholes in the cycle track, but at least they're not jarring. I'm assuming that the reason being is because this used to be a full lane of traffic that they separated with, yes, paint, but also bollards, even though they're of the flexible kind.
Car ticklers, as urbanists like to call them.
Okay, now it seems we are heading underneath a highway. It's at least 3 lanes in each direction, and it has absolutely decimated the urban fabric. There's nothing but empty and worthless parking lots underneath it, no buildings whatsoever. car tried to drive into me. But that's what happens as a second-class citizen. In exchange for riding a bicycle and making both the climate and the environment a better place for everybody else, you get to die. Yay. Okay. This is still a nice cycle track. There are a few old buildings here and there. And, okay, wow. That was the end of the cycle track with absolutely no warning. If I had not been paying attention, I would have continued into a left turn lane of the opposing direction of automobile traffic only. There should have been literally, I beg of you, any sign to indicate I was about to ride headfirst into opposing traffic. Dear gods, it strikes me that that cycle track is still under development. So far, Penn Street, not great. All that I've heard about the strip, could improve. On your right.
I told him 3 minutes. No, I'm not running, so I don't know. This is fine. You can get around with him. he laughing too and shit. He like, anyway, bitches. Hell no, bitches. Good job, sir. Good job.
Thank you. Bicycles are fun. Okay, now it seems that we've exited the Strip District because at least heretofore, while all of the sidewalks were set up for pedestrian activity, now there is no street front retail whatsoever. It's all warehouses of various degrees of death and decay. Okay, not necessarily. There are a few artist buildings and lofts here and there. Beg pardon? Thank you. Nicer than the previous people who told me to ride in a bike lane where there was none. So far it seems that the Strip is a mixed nightlife warehousing district. It is definitely on track to be gentrified massively, but it currently is not yet, which is itself impressive. Smooth sidewalks, America? Never. This is one of the hipper neighborhoods in one of the hipper cities within a decent driving distance of where I live. And yet if this is the quality of the pedestrian infrastructure here, well, I think there's no hope for the country. The only thing, the one and only thing that America has ever done right is scientific funding per capita.
Well, for now.
And that stems out of our history with nuclear research during World War II. People talk about small-town America, people talk about freedom, people talk about the American dream and social mobility, blah, blah, blah. Literally, the only thing that America does right, based on the data, is scientific employment. That is the one and only thing that sets us apart from every single other country in the world. Okay. If I were to continue up one of these two roads, I think it's Butler Street, I would encounter a really interesting place called the Church Brew Works. It's a former church made into a brewery. You know, the only possible use it could have, other than, I don't know, a house for Matt Smith. But based on the hills, among other things, I find myself disinclined to continue on this adventure. I will head 1 block further north to Penn Avenue, which will hopefully be the more interesting part of the Strip District, and I will see what I can see from there. Whoa, it's cobblestone! Woof. Okay, heading back into the Strip District. There's the occasional interesting building here or there, but there's a lot of fully forgotten single-story brick buildings every now and again. This is truly a neighborhood in the middle of gentrification, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's interesting, visually and sociologically. I don't know if it's a good thing that it's gentrifying, up-leveling a formerly industrial area, or if it is a bad thing, up-leveling an area formerly occupied by people who just simply happen to have a darker skin tone than myself. Shit, there's literally an apartment building here on the right called The Cigar Factory. I don't think that is compatible with Marxism. And once again, the sidewalk disappears.
Since this was recorded 2 full years ago, it's interesting to note how I've changed. Over the trip, I clearly preferred bicycling on the sidewalks, a move that, while strictly illegal in Pennsylvania, was motivated out of my own safety, since it was not exactly appealing to cycle around an unfamiliar city, in the dark, in mixed traffic, unprotected from negligently homicidal drivers by even so much as a strip of thermoplastic paint to clearly designate where I'm supposed to be and they're supposed to not. Nowadays, with much more experience, lights, reflectors, and a desire for martyrdom to demonstrate the failure of automobiles, their accompanying infrastructure, and those who buy into their use, I quite regularly take to bicycling in the exact middle of the road, using the full width of the lane as entitled to me by the law just as much as any other road user. I will also note here that there is a poor defense of the sidewalk, both in Pittsburgh, but also all across the country. Quite often they were blocked by parked cars, dumpsters, delivery vehicles, industrial trucks, and, in many other communities during the winter, ice. I ended up cutting out most of my commentary about how the sidewalk was blocked yet again by yet another dumpster because it just got so repetitive.
Ooh, I think I know this one. Pennsylvania Railroad Fruit Auction and Sales Building. If I am correct, I think this is the thing that made the Strip District the Strip District. This is a large non-passenger railroad terminal that I think was mostly LCL freight or railway post office stuff or something. And the train tracks surrounded it, and that's why the market district around here sprung up.
The Pittsburgh Produce Terminal, as it was later known, is a large, low masonry building of the Art Deco and Moderne styles, built in 1926 after the Pennsylvania Railroad had removed its tracks in downtown along Liberty Avenue. It was originally built at the behest of the United Fruit Auction to facilitate sale of full freight cars of fruit grown in Pennsylvania and the eastern Midwest en route to eastern markets. The history of the building is emblematic of Pittsburgh itself. The Depression depressed demand for luxury faraway fruits, the rise of supermarkets in the 1950s imperiled the fruit wholesale business, and the demise of Penn Central sent the building spiraling into the hands of the Urban Redevelopment Authority. Presciently, instead of demolishing it, the unexpectedly cash-strapped agency decided to retrofit the building with truck docks on all sides, but by the early 2000s it was abandoned. However, being both a city historic landmark and at the beneficial end of the rising urban hipster class, itself spurred by Pittsburgh's notable tech ed med industries, the building was renovated in 2019 as a public food market and incubator space for local businesses, now being the marquee establishment of the rapidly rising Strip District.
And once again, here I am on an impromptu mountain biking gravel track. Based on the map, it looks really, really long.
5 blocks, almost half a kilometer long, and over 14,000 square meters, to allow the Pennsylvania Railroad to unload long, contiguous cuts of cars, minimizing the time switching trains into shorter cuts.
Oh, that's actually admittedly a gorgeous skyline here. You know, for the hell of it, I will orbit this building, if I can safely, and I'll see what I can see. Oh, this is a surprisingly large space. An empty asphalt nowhere, where it's unclear where I have the right-of-way. Well, at least they have a cycle gutter. Okay, that's interesting. They have a bunch of clearly designated passageways into the interior. Ooh, it also looks like the thing is branded as the terminal. And there are a lot of aggressively gentrified warehouses to the outside. Actually, now on this side, it's starting to look like a strip mall. Not the greatest thing in the world. It also does look like there is some degree of construction ongoing. I can forgive that. Construction is good. It shows that some place is growing, or at least maintaining itself. The inexcusable is complacency. Okay. I've made it all the way around the terminal. Oh, God. Do I have it in me? Okay, for fuck's sake, I think the answer is simple enough. I'm here. I am unlikely to be here again. Let me make the most use of here that I can. Even if it's just a single drink and a fry. I can say that I've been. That's what matters. From Monty Brothers. You know, that's an interesting and rare occurrence of the fartmobile, an entirely pneumatically powered automobile, made use of only by air and small dick energy.
That's all.
Merci. Is anybody sitting here? Thank you.
Primanti Brothers, known locally as Premiani, is a sandwich and lounge chain founded in 1933 right in the heart of the Strip District. Even through the Depression, the Strip was a major hub of industry, filled with warehouses, factories, and even shipyards. Suburbanite brothers Joe, then later Dick and Stanley Premiani, opened their sandwich restaurant to serve the late-night and early morning produce workers of the area. At the height of the Depression, amidst a high-carbohydrate, comfort food-fueled coma, they invented their signature sandwich, a roast beef on thick sourdough bread, but combined with the sides of the sandwich, piling on both french fries and coleslaw, then wrapping the Mega-Witch into wax paper to create the world's first modern reduced spillage takeout food for the truck drivers and short shoresmen of the area. The brand has since become an Appalachian staple, expanding to West Virginia, Ohio, Maryland, even Florida, and notably, State College, Pennsylvania. It is tradition to be pilgrimaged by freshly drafted NFL players, and was visited in 2022 by Amtrak Joe Biden and John Two-Faced Zionist Fuckwad Fetterman. The chain has been featured in National Geographic, Man v. Food, The Daily Show, ESPN, the James Beard Foundation, and even a very Pittsburghian corner of the internet, Yinstagram. And with that, I had a lovely evening with magnificent food at a historic restaurant and bar. Many props to the staff. I made it back to my hotel around 0200, less endangered by inebriation and hypothermia, then slept a very warm, sound night to ready myself for the long bicycle trek tomorrow. This has been episode 9 of the Proto-Future podcast, Gap Pilot Part 1. The theme music is Spark of Life by Benjamin Lazarus through Tribe of Noise. I would like to thank my extremely generous and patient patrons Pedro Reyes, Andrew Laverghetta, Ron Kleiss, Bill Ford, Linda Eskin, and Roger Coleman. Extra special thanks this episode to Roger Coleman for mixing and salvaging the audio. If you would like to know more, you can visit the website at www.bgtmrring.org. That's Bravo Golf Tango, Michael Romeo Romeo, Indigo November Golf, Oscar Romeo Golf. To listen to the Manifesto and Prologue series, watch the Modern Modeling Clinic anthology, or read the free-to-access Patreon production blog, and please consider donating on a monthly basis to help defer hosting and equipment costs and support what I do. This content is provisionally CAN-credentialed. You can report instances of harassment, abuse, or other harm to 617-249-4255 or at creatoraccountabilitynetwork.org. This podcast was written, recorded, and produced on the ancestral lands of the Susquehannock, Osage, Shawanoaki, Massawomack, Monongahela, Cherokee, and Yuchi peoples. I would like to thank them for their historical stewardship of central and southwestern Pennsylvania and north-central Tennessee. Thank you very much for listening. Keep riding trains, keep punching Nazis, and keep fighting for a better future.